Okay. All right. Well, thank you, Scott. Hopefully everybody can hear me loud and clear. If I'm coming through too loud or too quiet, somebody just let me know, and I can always make an adjustment over here. So once again, want to thank everybody for attending today's Office Hours webinar. Today, November 23rd, 2015. The year is coming to a close rather rapidly. And so today, what we're going to talk about a little bit today is, well, of course, before the fun starts, we have to get through a little legal process here. I just want to make sure that everybody that's attending today realizes that we here at Trade Ideas are not registered investment advisors, so please do not mistake what we discuss here today as a solicitation on an investment. All the information that we share with you here today should be used as educational purposes only. Okay, moving right along. Whoops. Okay, so what are we going to talk about today? Hey, I'll call it fun with the SPY. But whether it's the SPY or anything else, we can apply this methodology to it. For those of you who might remember a few Thursdays ago, we talked about single symbol back testing. And we're basically going to take that a little step further today, not only in finding good events for what I like to try to find these for the more liquid instruments out there. Of course, we know the SPY, very liquid, unless things are just really crazy. We can always get some pretty good fills in that instrument without having to worry too much about the slippage or the price difference in what the backtester says and the actual price that we get. So what I've done here today, and before we move on, let's go ahead and just kind of review some of the trades, or just kind of talk about the action that the AI channel produced today. And of course, some of you may have seen the stock that is up here right now, AEZS, which of course was a hot topic in the chat room today. A lot of our traders that frequent the room, including Barry and some of the other guys, were able to pick this little stock right here off as it broke out today. Of course, using Trade Ideas technology. Of course, this little guy was probably on a lot of different filters and alert combos today. But if you were lucky enough to have one that triggered it, probably one of the best appreciating stocks of the day, especially considering the fact that we were pretty much in a down day today. So the interesting thing to point out today is to look and see what's happening after the market. All right, and so here we can see the close, and then wow, definitely a lot of buy interest in that guy. So if you're in it, kudos. If you made money in it today, kudos. Hopefully there'll be some more of these in the future. All right, just a little flavor of the day there. Unfortunately, it did not come across the AI today. So if we look at the SPY today, here we see the opening bar today, and of course we put in a low and we put in a high pretty quickly, and then we started doing this little choppy range dance, and just pretty much stayed in that range until about 2 hours before the close here. Actually, that was about 11:35, so it looks like we capitulated here with about an hour and 15 minutes to go. So while our cluster was heavy on the heavy on the short side today, the hold times, got us out before this move occurred. And of course, it's always easy in hindsight to look and say, well, I wish we could have held the shorts. But everybody just needs to keep in mind, if we look at the trades, and these are all of the trades that were produced today. So we can see that all these short plays right here, were profitable at the time stop, which for that strategy, we can notice selling into the strength correlates with the time stop right here, 60 minutes. So as we always say, these times are set up to be, yardsticks, because we have to have something to back test with, across the board. However, just as we said, I can't remember if I repeated this in the last Thursday's or Monday's webinar, but it always comes back down to this. If you're in a trade that's generated from the AI and it's headed your way and the time ends, you don't necessarily have to get out. you can say, okay, this is the time that's recommended that I get out, but if the momentum is still going your way, then you can say, okay, I'm up a quarter, I'm up 30 cents, I'll give a 6 or 7 cent pullback based on the chart, what seems reasonable. So I'm sure there are some people out there that manage to hold some of these for the longer term. But in any case, the market move was just a little late in the day. So from a, I guess, a expectation standpoint, when the cluster overall does have what we would term a losing day, this is the type of losing day I'd like to see, because we've still got Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday. Of course, the market is closed Thursday. So, based on my experience with holidays, probably a lot of volume is going to get, tomorrow could be very interesting because there's probably a lot of volume that has to get done. Wednesday is going to be probably a slow day, Thursday. So stay on your toes tomorrow, because tomorrow could be very interesting. And then once again, just to close out, talking about the performance here, pretty much flat or down slightly on a day like today where the move did not occur till later in the day, and we can't be too disappointed with that. So we'll see what happens for tomorrow. All right, so moving right along into the topic today of fun with the SPY, let me just declutter the screen here a little bit and show everybody what I've been working on here. And these results will look quite simplistic. Of course, the time it took to kind of uncover these nuggets wasn't extremely quick, wasn't extremely long. Anybody that's taking on this type of work that I'm about to show you, depending on the instrument that you're targeting, you can find some pretty good results, and you're not going to have to be there forever. So having said that, I'm going to pull over these 3 events. We could just call these events. All right, so we got 2 1 hour, so let me just put these over here. Put them in a little consecutive order here. So we all know the SPY is probably the most liquid instrument out there. Now, because it's so liquid, and because it always has lots of volume pumping through it, then we can find a lot of good events just to trade on the SPY. And the reason I want to pick the SPY is because it's, well, for the obvious reasons, it's liquid. It's one of the most widely known ETF, and it tracks the S&P 500. So, having said that, what we can do is we can take different times of the day and find opportunity in the SPY. So the first one here, 12:30 p.m. Eastern, exactly 3 hours into the open. So we look here for finding a trade in the SPY shortly after 12:30. This is a short play, and this is designed for a 15-minute hold pattern. So if we look in here, it's basically just looking to see what would happen if we do buy the SPY when it's hitting a high in that time period. And as long as the 1-minute volume metrics are falling between 50% above normal, but not to exceed 250%, or 2.5 times normal. Now, at first you might just think that I picked these at random, but I didn't. When I ran the initial back test, I went, back to the optimization tab and found that, and it just stuck out like a sore thumb. So it was a very simple optimization as far as that filter goes. And then, of course, in all of these, we're just looking at the SPY. All right, so 3 hours into the open, if we go look at the back test here, they're trying to trick me today. We got a new version to test out. They moved around some of my my settings here. So instead of run backtester, in the future we're going to say backtest strategy. Pulls up the odds maker panel. So everybody needs to keep in mind this is 12:30 Eastern because I'm in California, so 3 hours behind. Set up for a 15-minute hold time for the full 65 days, and we run the back test. All right, so if we look at the daily here, we can see that this thing's only spitting out trades when the SPY has accelerated 1-minute volume. Now, whether we pick that metric or any other specific metric that interests us, doesn't really matter. The process is the same. So here we can see in the past 65 trading days, we're only getting 9 trades. But that's okay because of the way we're going to be layering this event, because this is just how this event unfolds for this time slice right here between 12:30 Eastern and 1 o'clock, 12:30 and 1 o'clock Eastern. So, you might think, well, this really isn't even worth watching. Well, on these days, it's certainly worth watching. So all we have to do is try to fill in the holes here, or create additional events in the same day, but just in a different time frame. So the interesting thing to point out here is that I'm not using not only a profit target, and I'm not using a stop loss either. So when we're talking about this event and whether it's attractive or not, a 5-cent average loser and a 26-cent average winner, nothing to sneeze at, especially when it's a big liquid instrument like the SPY. So we'll just push this guy over here. And now let's take a look at this guy, which is the exact same thing, just looking at the SPY. But this is for the 2 p.m. Eastern time. So with 2 hours left to go in the market, if the criteria is met, then it makes more sense to go long. So make sure all the settings are proper here. Everything looks good. 2 p.m. Eastern. When that high volume level is met, if we go long. All right, well, let's try that one more time. And for some reason, okay, there we go. It's taking its time today, so bear with us. And while this is completing, once again, the emphasis isn't on the low trade count, but basically just trying to show the philosophy of the single stock backtest here. Because, we could easily change this up, find a whole new event, whereas this is just a simple high with accelerated volume, whether it's a 25% pullback from the high or, any other thing that we offer as far as alerts and filters go. When we're focusing just on one instrument, we can power through that data. All right, well, running into just a little bit of resistance here, so I'm going to go ahead and get these other scans started just to try to save us some time here. All right, so that one's finished. Once again, only 4 trades coming through, but, nothing to sneeze at. When those 4 trades do come through, this is exceptionally high probability. Now, moving forward, can we be assured that it's going to maintain 100% efficiency? Maybe, maybe not, but this is certainly encouraging. So now we've got trades on these days, and we've added trades to those days here. So, we can see nothing on this day from this one. Hold on, I'm having a little system issue here. And then lastly, we have this guy to bring into the mix. So now, we've got 4 long opportunities, all within, say a 3-hour period of each other in any single trading day. So 16 from this guy, 4 from this guy, and 9 from this guy. Now we're starting to build a decent trade count for the SPY. Extremely high probability events. Not huge amounts of buying power are required. And once again, just to make sure that we're getting accurate depictions of what to expect, building in a $5 commission rate. And keep in mind that's only on a 100-share trade. If we start doing 200 shares, we're going to increase, our return significantly as long as this doesn't increase too much. But $5 is usually a pretty good average place to start for most people. And then, of course, we're also building in 4 cents of slippage on the entry and the exit, which is pretty realistic on the SPY. All right, so we got the 3 longs. And then here's one for the SPY. into the short side. And once again, this is looking at the last hour too, so we don't have to worry, unless it's a very, very volatile day, we're not going to have the SPY, hitting those highs and lows in the same time period there, although it is possible. Once again, I could sing Girl to Ipanema while this scan is completing, but I will save you all that experience. So on this one, you'll all notice that it is the only one where we implemented a stop loss. So pretty reasonable stop loss, unless it's real crazy on the SPY is a quarter due to its liquidity. So the interesting thing to point out about this one is we do implement a stop loss with no profit target. This one is just set up to go to look at taking trades in the last hour with a hold time till a minute before the close. And so using a 25-cent stop loss on this one, which is a short, we get a nice ratio between winner and loser here. Almost triple, not quite. But, once again, added 15 more SPY trades to our past 60-day trading period. And so, while finding all of these specific events, probably took me, I don't know, hour and a half of fiddling with things and looking at the optimization tab, it's a very fruitful way to go about the process. So that, once you get a fair stable of these guys, and of course we never just want to jump into the pool headlong. So once we start creating all of these specific events for an individual stock, then we can start archiving them or watching them and seeing, how they hold up moving forward. So, with a 65-day backtest, we can get a pretty good, field of expectations. But the nice thing about these is they're few and far between. And so, they should only fire on those days where the volume is warranted on the SPY. So once we create a bunch of high-quality events for a single symbol, then it becomes really easy just to start, because obviously these guys aren't firing very often. So it makes perfect sense to then take them and pop them all into a multi-strategy window, like you see here. And of course on this one, oh no. Well, let's hope that I don't have to restart here. Yes. All right. Okay, so fortunately I did not have to restart my developer's version here. But the bottom line is this: when we look into this multi-strategy window, we can see I've just simply imported all of those strategies into the window. And just to refresh anyone's memory in case they're a little fuzzy on how we go about that process. For example, if I spawned a new multi-strat window, and then we wanted to go about the process of moving these guys into it, it's really easy just to right-click. And on the new version, I believe we go to, nope, collaborate's down here now. We just say copy, strategy, new strategy, collaborate, and paste. And then that strategy lives in there. We would just repeat that process for as many strategies as you wanted to move into the multi-strategy window. Once again, just collaborate and paste. So real simple to get your single strategy events or single stock events populated into this multi-strat window, so that obviously they're not firing very frequently, but on the day where this SPY trades window does come to life, it would probably make a lot of sense to pay attention to those trades. Alrighty, so let's do a little experiment here since we still have a little bit of time. And let's just try to throw some, let me try to give you a peek into, the process here just by trying something completely different and off the cuff. So here, let's do this. And does anybody in the audience have a symbol that we would want to try here? And of course, it needs to be fairly liquid. So if anybody out there wants to cough up a symbol, we could certainly use that as an example, or I could just pick one at random here. All right, so Jeff is recommending AEZS, which might be good and might not, but you know what? It's always interesting to see here because obviously today AEZS had, wow, what a crazy day. But, if we look back in the past, it looks like AEZS is pretty tired most of the time. So let's just do this. Let me go to a different time frame here, just so we can get a better peek. So it looks like, on a daily basis, it does have some volatility, just nothing like what we've seen recently. But let's try to use it as an example, just to see here. You have to pardon me, my questions tab got a little messed up here. Okay, well I see lots of symbols in there now. All right, so let's try this. We'll just go to configure. I always like to just hit a start from scratch and hit load settings. And then we'll just pop in here and talk to AEZS. AEZS. Okay. So let's do this. Let's pick something very basic. How about a 25% pullback from high? Add that alert, make sure we don't have anything that's going to weed anything out here. Okay. So now we have AEZS. All we're looking at is what happens if we act on it most of the time when it takes a 25% pullback. So we can just say, okay, for this initial scan, let's at least give the market 10, let's go ahead and say 15 minutes to get all the craziness over with. And we can just do the 64-day back test, and just to see what it comes back with initially, we'll just say, okay, what happens if we go long every time it pulls back 25% from the high? And then we hold it for 15 minutes. So the odds maker's doing its magic. Hopefully it looks like it'll be done fairly rapidly. Wow. I'm not really sure I understand what I'm seeing here. Okay, hold on one second. Not used to dealing with such low numbers. Okay. Share size 100. Starting equity. So, obviously, since we don't have today's data folded into the equation, what's happening is, on 100 shares of AEZS, it's a lot more than that price now. So let us look back into the history here. So these numbers right here, here's the interesting part. 86.4% winners, a 1 cent winner versus a 0 cent loser. So there's definitely something here. Problem is, how do we play it, right? So we could go back and start changing basically things around like hold time, or we could go straight to the optimization tab and kind of see what's going on here. So if we go to the other filters, which as long as we have all of those columns selected within our backtest, now we can start trying to find some filters that might add some meaning to this. So percent of float traded, shows some pretty interesting metrics here, but probably not the best thing to go to right off the bat. So let's go to some of the more interesting metrics like 1 minute volume. This stock right here, this is a pretty good indicator because it seems like no matter what type of volume level it's doing, it's always spitting out something interesting. So let's just say it has to be over 200. So we can see that once again here we're not really finding a whole lot of good information. We can see that most of the trades in AEZS, when the 1 minute volume is at least between normal or 0 and twice normal, that's when the majority of the trades are coming through. So, you know, once again, this process that I'm going through now is what I went through earlier with the SPY, and sometimes we find something right off the bat, and sometimes we have to dig down a little bit further to show us, you know, what could be the interesting events. So, you know, here we can notice that when it does have dramatic changes in the 10-minute period, you know, either to the upside, here we're seeing, you know, in this column right here, when the 10-minute change is, you know, somewhere between 0 and these increments, well, it makes a lot of sense to maybe fold these into the equation and rerun the back test. So, you know, sometimes we're going to find something right off the bat, other times not. This is one that if you really wanted to dig down, it's probably going to take a little bit of time. Or we could just simply go to, you know, changing the event and going, okay, well, maybe the 25% pullback isn't the best place to start. We can select from one of our many other alerts that we have to try and see if that's going to be a little more fruitful. You know, the win percent looks extremely enticing here, but, you know, unless we can alter this to increase the spread between winner and loser, then obviously we're going to run into some issues. Exactly the point why I use the SPY today. And by the way, a lot of these results that we're seeing on the SPY today, if you really want to increase trade count, you can take some of the other things that move along with the SPY, like the Dow. More than likely, these would all work pretty well with the Dow as well, or maybe the NASDAQ 100 or the S&P 100 as well. All right, so you know, whether we start off with a more obscure stock like AEZS, which everybody's talking about today because of its action, or whether we start with something extremely liquid, you know, we can find some really good events. So at this point, we're about 30 minutes into it, so it's probably a pretty good time to open up the floor to questions, and we can take it from there.
Yeah, Carl had one. I think he's got to run. It's a little lengthy. Jamie, about to go on a long drive, so sending question now. Going back to last week's strategy of shorting turbo breaks with custom symbol lists and vice versa for longs on turbo breaks down, can you briefly go over what makes a good candidate for a short? If, for example, long wick, hold number approaching average true range, etc.? And I'm sure he'll look for the replay of the video for the answer.
Yeah, let me see if I can pull that from my cloud here. Give me a second. Okie dokie, almost there. Top 20 long. 1 second. Just have to make a couple of adjustments here. Well, if I could get my windows to cooperate. There we go. All right, so let's take a look here. Hold on 1 second. So once again, this was working off of a custom list. I believe the whole time was 15. And it was basically generating that custom list from the turbo breaks down. After the first 30 minutes, we look at the history. No, actually, let me restate that. I use these windows as examples so much, sometimes they get swirly in my head. But this list was generated by backtesting the turbo breaks down to find bottoming patterns. So what I did is I ran that history over the 65-day period. I then went to the optimization tab and took only the top 20 performing stocks, or the top 20 repeat offenders that would come through there, and made a custom list out of those guys. So let's see if I've got my numbers plugged in here right. And this one might take a while to run. I hope not. But while we're letting it run, to go on to talk even further, most of the time, no matter what the pattern is that we're looking for. In my case, it's the range breaks, in which case I use turbo brakes up and down to try to find those guys. But when I'm trying to play the brake to the upside, I'm wanting high volume to go with that trend. Now, the take on what we're doing here is we're looking at the top 20, but we're looking at a certain point of the day so that on the stocks that do have institutional selling, this little strategy right here can try to help you find the pullbacks, or in this case, the bounces. So almost done here. And when I say a bounce, or a bottoming pattern, the SPY did one today as we came down. These are 5-minute candles. If you're watching, you're like, okay, put in this wick here. When this candle starts to form, if you were thinking go long, well, then that's a very reassuring event right there, because, as soon as this bar closes, this one opens up right here, then you can easily get long and use that tail or just outside of the tail as your exit, and therefore not pull your hair out. Okay. I think this calculation is complete here. So to get back to the gentleman's question there. Hey Scott, could we just get a little mute there on your microphone? Thank you. So going back to the gentleman's question, the goal here is when these trades present themselves is to look and see if you can identify that bottom pattern so that you can take advantage of things like this. And, one of the hardest things to figure out is, people that like to play the bottom bounces or like to fade the tops. Those are always the charts, and you've probably heard me say this before, that always look the sexiest in retrospect. That's why a lot of people, especially when they're new traders, they're like, okay, I want to find these stocks that are really going down because I want to buy them at the bottom, and I want to find these stocks that are going up crazy because I know they're going to pull back and I'm going to short them at the top, right? And you're just like, you see all these charts in retrospect, you're like, well, that's what I want to do. And also, they backtest very well. But the problem is knowing when they're going to, trying to hypothesize or guess when they're going to bounce and try to guess when they're running out of steam to the top side. A lot easier said than done. So this is a tool that can help us predict that once again. Many of you have heard in the past using the top list to do that as well. And this is the same way, just in a different format. So, the bottom line is, if we were to look at some of the plays that came through here today, and of course, depending on the market direction, maybe this one was the more fertile one, or the one at the top calling for the fades was more industrious today. Looking at the market action, it does look to be that the short side would have been probably the time better spent today. But whether we look at the bottoming patterns or the topping patterns, they're going to look exactly the same as what you see right here in the SPY. So, during the market day, assuming you've got a pretty good handle, we were kind of flat most of the day, but now, as we came down from here and surpassed these previous lows, once you get the break there, unless you're a bottom feeder trying to play off the bottom of the SPY here or trying to find some components within the SPY that bounced here, well then probably most of the action was going to be up here today. So I hope I answered the question, because I know it can get a little bit confusing because you're like, well, turbo brakes up and turbo brakes down, it's supposed to go with the trend on heavy volume. Yes, but we can use modified versions of them to try to use them in the opposite fashion, but for smaller time frames, as I did in this case. Alrighty.
Yeah, if anyone has any questions, please ask in the questions panel, and Jamie will be happy to get to them. In the meantime, if you want to look at the handouts panel in your GoToWebinar presentation, you'll find the product code for today is for 30% off of anything is thanks, all capitals, THANKS. There's also a link in there to go to get the 1288 combo, so you can get a full year and lifetime access to the AI and odds maker for just 1288. And the link for that is bit.ly/capital SAVE 700. Again, both of those slides are in the handouts panel as a PDF with links. Any questions? Wow. Everyone's so stunned at the presentation, I think they don't know what to ask.
Oh, and by the way, everyone, the multi-strategy window will be available. So if you want the multi-strategy window from today, just email info@trade-ideas.com, and we'll make sure we get that cloud link sent over to you. Scott, anything else to add today from you, or unless we have any more questions?
No, nothing at all. Just wanted to reiterate that we've got that 30% off sale going on all week for Thanksgiving. Again, product code is thanks, THANKS, all capitals, and also use that link for the 1288 deal if you would like to get into having the AI and a full year. And if you're already a monthly subscriber, you can just switch over to that package. It'll save you a lot. Jamie, thanks. Thanks, everyone. No free turkey. Sorry, Mike. We can't really mail that out. But thanks, everyone. Thanks, all. Thanks, Jamie. We are having the QA webinar on Wednesday, but that's the only other webinar this week. Jamie's trading studio will not happen on Thursday, obviously, because it's a holiday, and we'll resume that the week after. Thanks, everyone. Bye, Jamie.
Thank you for attending, everyone. We'll see you on the next one. Bye-bye.